Hello on this wonderful Wednesday, and welcome to Straight No Chaser with Dr. Julius Bailey, live from the magnificently beautiful campus of Wittenberg University in Springfield, Ohio. You guessed it, I am Dr. Julius Bailey, and I am just so proud to host this pilot show. We are here for about 12 episodes, and after that, our future is tied to your support. And your watching of the show. So please, right now, start a watch party, tag some friends, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to Dr. Julius Bailey on YouTube. This indeed is my show. It got my name on it, I guess, but technically it's your show, and so therefore it's our show. And today marks our fourth installment, and momentum is certainly moving in a positive direction. Over 10,000 views so far that we've had on our first three shows, and I do not take your interest for granted. I thank you. And so as we think about what this show is about today, I dare you to sort of think back to elementary school days, right? Did you see a Black male teacher? Now go to your high school days and imagine all those wonderful teachers you had. How many of them were Black men? You know, stats show that many of us can go into all the elementary schools in our area and just count the number of Black men that teach within these ranks. A few more maybe at the middle school rank and a few more at the high school level. And this, of course, is just in urban communities. That the numbers get fewer in the suburbs and even almost non-existent in rural areas. Our challenge is to ensure that many more of our children, and particularly young Black boys, are successful. We must reduce the dropout rates and increase the graduation rates, especially at the 8th and the 12th grade ranks. So I am here today, all you wonderful Straight No Chaser viewers, to say that our best path forward to ensure that we have excellence in our community, and especially with our Black males, is to invest in men of color to represent themselves more as mentors, teachers, principals, and administrators. Today's show will feature three Black men, three educators, three concerned community members who's been very much engaged in education throughout their tenure. As you know, I'm a writer, right? I'm a writer of I have 6 books, 5 academic books, and 3 of my books, though, have attempted to use hip hop culture to reach the minds and hearts of our youth. The Jay-Z book, right? The Philosophy of Hip Hop book, and the Kanye book were all written together to sort of create what I like to, what many have called culturally relevant pedagogy. Something that I've been talking about since grad school in '95. And I was reading everything from Henry Giraud to Gloria Ladston's Billings to Joanza Kunjufu to Malefi Asante, right? And so for me, as a Black student, and now as a Black educator, you see, teaching is what I do. As a Black educator, tapping into the not only the minds, but the hearts and spirits even of our students is my mission. So our guests today certainly are student-centered, race-conscious, but all purpose toward making education and as inclusive of a space as possible. You know, I should say that these choices these educators have made are a little bit different than those of you around the country who have focused on African-centered schools or Afrocentric schools or freedom schools and the like. Shout out to those that I've visited, like the Betty Shabazz School in Chicago, the Freedom School in Chicago, the good brother, the Dr. Palmer at the Marcus Garvey School in LA, who I just was there a few weeks ago. And I cannot forget in the nation's capital, the Nation's House in Washington, D.C. So today on Straight No Chaser, we are in search of Black male educators. And I'm excited that you are here today. And before we move on and introduce our first guest, I would like to introduce to some and present to others my co-host and friend, Miss Tisa. How you doing, Miss Tisa?
I'm good today, Dr. Bailey. How are you?
Oh, it's a beautiful day. I got my teaching is my thing shirt. I'm ready to kick it with my fellow educators and certainly engage with you. And especially with you, I think this is an important day for you. You have children. They're right here in the room with us
They
today.
are with us today.
You have two sons in the room. And I'm very interested to see how they grasp this conversation and what it means to them to have other Black men in the classroom and that kind of thing. And so as a mother, though, what are your thoughts as it relates to especially Black men in the classroom?
I think it's of the utmost importance that we have Black males present in our classroom, and not just to serve as role models and mentors for the kids, but to give them something to aim for, so to speak. You know, oftentimes there's European or Caucasian males and females in the classroom, and they can't really relate to who our young men are, who they are and where they came from and things of that nature. And with them out not being able to relate to our students, to me, that sometimes forms a hindrance in that relationship. So then you have behavioral issues. You know, kids may shut down. They may not care for the teacher may not care for them, but I think it stems from them not being able to relate one to another. No empathy.
No empathy. Yeah, no, I'm with you. And so we're excited for today, right?
Yes.
Those of you know, this is our Wednesday. So this is our Friday, if you will, as far as the show is concerned. So let's get started, right? We have 3 guests today. We got a busy show. So let's get started. Let's first go to my brother, my Howard University brother, Dr. Kamasi Hill. He is a 1994 graduate of Howard University. He graduated, I think, in film, and he's had 13 years now as an educator at the Evanston Township High School in Evanston, Illinois. He is a doctor of theology from the esteemed Garrett Evangelical Seminary in Chicago. He is my brother. I don't even know where to start, Kamasi. Should we talk about James Cone and Niebuhr, or should we talk about education today?
Well, hey, I'm going to tell you something. Niebuhr and Cone are very, very relevant. You know, you're talking about 2 giants who held theological perspectives that were way before their time that really speak to this moment in so many ways. But
no question.
But yeah, we can start with education. You know, I mean, that's focus. I mean, there's so many directions we can go. Yeah. But,
yeah. You know, first, brother, you know, I got to give my shout out. HU.
Absolutely. You know.
All right. So listen, man, to know you, those of you, those around the country who know you, know that one of your loves, if not, I don't know if it's your first love or not, but one of your loves, quite frankly, is art and African artifacts. But where did that love come from, man?
Man, I would say, you know, my story is pretty simple. I mean, I grew up in the city of Detroit. You know, my parents were products of the 60s, and the Shrine of the Black Madonna was where they met, which is a Black nationalist Christian Orthodox church. And of course, like many young people in the 60s, Black people in the 60s, that generation whose parents were migrants, Southern migrants, you know, they were struggling with their own identity. You know, what does it mean to be, you know, Black in America, a teenager, young 20-something-year-old in the 1960s, and trying to make sense of the world. And, you know, one of the ways that they made sense was a kind of reaffirmation with their own Blackness and reaffirmation of their own Africanness. So one of the ways in which, you know, they identified with celebrating that was through you know, their appreciation and love of art, both, you know, of course, music. I mean, you know, I'm from Detroit, so the Motown era was huge, and visual arts. And, you know, we can talk about the Black arts movement and how, you know, impactful that was. But it was also, you know, a time period of the late 1960s where my parents, who were college students, were, you know, building and forming friendships with that kind of first generation of African students who were coming over here during the post-colonial era. And sometimes even the in the midst of revolutions that are happening in Africa. So, you know, the exchanges that were happening between their friends and and the bonds that they were making. Obviously, art was a big part of those conversations, and I'm a product of that. So that's what my 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old self saw, 5-year-old self saw when I was coming in and out of the house and playing outside. I was coming inside to a home where all of these great conversations were happening with
True.
my parents and their friends, and also them sharing their love of art and music.
Now that's important. And since you mentioned your parents, let's the audience should know that recently you are the executive producer of a documentary on children of the Black arts and the Black Power movement.
Yeah.
Many of those children, of course, went to school with us at
Yeah.
Howard. But
Yeah.
I'm certainly just tell us a little bit about the Born in the Struggle project.
So Born in the Struggle really was a way for me to just explore how during the early days of I would say probably right after Trayvon Martin, I really started to think about the role in which Black nationalism, the civil rights movement, Pan-Africanism, all of those varying perspectives were so informative and instructive in my own childhood. And I started to think about, like, wow, these are things that I've been talking about, that a lot of the newer conversations that people were just getting into around the Black freedom struggle were conversations that I've been hearing about since my early childhood. And I started to ask myself, well, what if I started to actually talk to people who've been hearing these conversations all of their life, who are part of my generation, right? And so it was literally just like thinking about like writing an article at first, like most of us as scholars do. We think our first, our knee-jerk reaction to our curiosity is to write, right? To research and to write. I said I could do that, sure, but I wanted to be able to share that story with as many people as possible, and not simply the 5 colleagues that we work with and the 6 people who are going to appreciate and circulate our work.
Right.
So I said, well, let me do a film. I graduated from Howard with this degree, in film. I know how to make movies, and I people who were part of the movement. And I didn't realize how closely, how literally there was like 1 or 2 degrees of separation from us. So, so then I went on a mission, and I said, well, I'm going to do this film. So let me, kind of put fillers out there and see who'd be interested. And I got more yeses than nos.
Right.
And it took 2 years it took about a good 2 years just to kind of do the research and get the production end done. And then it took another 1.5 years to actually edit the project and get the funding and all that stuff. So yeah, Born in the Struggle, it features everyone from, Rakia Lumumba to Raz Baraka to Ta-Nehisi Coates, to Fred Hampton Jr. I mean, we span the gamut. Ayanna Gregory. There's so many folks who contributed to that project, gave of their time, and it was a great undertaking, and it was deeply and profoundly personal for me as well as political, right? Because the political stuff is obvious, right? It's really exploring the ways in which we, see how that particular generation had an impact on not only the politics of the time period, but their literal family members, their children. Right. But it also was personal because it one of the things that's not often explored is the impact that activism has immediately on the activist families. Especially when it comes to children. When you're talking about being arrested, when you're talking about putting so much emphasis on activism and getting out into the streets and writing and speaking and doing all of these things, you're talking about time away from the home. You're talking about time away from your children. Right. And you're talking about putting your life on the line when you have parental responsibilities, and that has an impact on children, No,
that's real. And I mean, just thinking about that project, and now, of course, the years that you've been an educator. I mean, there has to be a way. I know you do some African American studies. There has to be a way that all this background influences you as a teacher. If you had to tell the audience right now, what kind of teacher are you? How would you identify that?
Oh, I would say I'm empathetic. I would say that I am a big believer in intellectual and helping to ferment intellectual curiosity. But I would say my philosophy is very simple. I'm a student first teacher. And I know you, Dr. Bailey, you're very, very much the same. Content is secondary and maybe even tertiary in some cases.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Our responsibility is to the human that is in front of us.
No question. No.
And so what that means is there are days where, or there are moments where it ain't about the written text in the book. It ain't about the grades. It ain't about getting through the curriculum. It's about addressing the human needs of the young people that their parents and institutions entrust us to. Right. And even when their parents and or institutions are so interested in numbers and grades, we have to be the ones who push back and say, no, it's about developing these young people, being there and being present for these young people in ways that include academics, but also that respond to their social and emotional development as well.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And I know that means a lot to you as a mother, right?
It most definitely does.
So, man, look, I know that right now in America, they say that about 7 to 8% of our teachers are African American, and only about 2 of those percent are Black men. What are young people missing when they don't have Black men, and especially Black boys? But what are young people missing when we only have 2 or 3% of Black men in the classroom?
I think on a very basic level, they're missing a representation of professional Black men in their lives who are not their coaches. They're sports coaches.
Mm.
A lot of young, particularly Black men, their only interaction with professional Black men are police officers.
Mm.
I mean, that's really who they see
on
a day-to-day basis. If you're taking a young 12-year-old Black boy and outside of his immediate family, let's just take him on a 24-hour day. Who does he see when he leaves the house? That's a professional, a white collar professional. If you're going to use that class distinction, who does he see when he leaves the house? When he gets on the bus? When he goes to the corner store? When he, walks down the street? I mean, if he sees anyone, if he sees the pastor during the week outside, okay, maybe, but that's pretty much it.
Wow.
And so what happens when he comes to school? 77% of his teachers are white women, right? 8% of his teachers may be black women. And he may have a Black male teacher once or twice from K through 12. And 90% of the time, if he does have a Black male teacher during that time period, that Black male teacher is the gym teacher.
Right. He doubles as a coach, right?
Right. He doubles as a coach.
Right.
Now what ironically, what he may see more than anything in a K through 12 setting is a Black male administrator. But he's not. But when is he dealing with that administrator? It's usually in a punitive situation.
Sure.
Or rarely, at all, does he even come in contact with them on a personal basis. Mm-hmm. And in many schools, he's not the only Black men that he's seeing. Primarily are those who are in positions of, typically when he deals with situations when he has to deal with punitive stuff, he deals with deans, principals, or security guards. Right. So when he comes into a science classroom or a math classroom or a history classroom or definitely a foreign language classroom, I mean, you rarely see Black men in those positions, which mean that if a young Black boy, and I'm isolating Black boys because girls need to see Black male teachers too, but I'm specifically just talking about young black boys.
Yeah.
if I'm spending my entire day, and the only black men that I see when there's a putative issue, and I don't have an opportunity to engage with black men in any academic context, who really has my back?
Right.
Who is there to support me? Who is there to help me wade through these emotional and social waters? Who can I talk to? Where can I find refuge? Where can I find respite? Where can I find academic inspiration? You know, who am I? Where are the voices that are giving me the prose that I need outside of the hip hop that I listen to? Right?
I know that's right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because one of the things about rappers is rappers give young black men in particular prose. They give them narratives. They give them stories. They give them creativity. I mean, it's not like they're not engaging with black men. They're engaging black men indirectly through the medium of music.
Right.
But where are these other voices that they need in their lives that give them a little bit more personal touch, some more nuance, some connection, some deeper and profound meaning that push them into certain ways. And so it's really a travesty that many of the brothers that I know who go to college don't become male teachers, and if they do, they end up going into administration or they leave the profession in and of itself because of several reasons. Primarily, and many of those are economic reasons.
Right.
And and I know, no matter where we are right now economically, we had other choices.
Yeah.
We made a choice to do this.
Right.
And we had enough skills and enough. We knew enough people to get a job to make more money. You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't just, one of the things about going to Howard is the access that you have to other folks.
Right.
Like most schools, especially elite schools, you build relationships and you build connections. And so sometimes the gigs you get are just because you know somebody.
Because you know somebody.
A whole lot of reasons that the gigs you get is because you know somebody.
Right.
And and the people that we went to school with are the who's who in Black America now.
No question. Man, that's real, man. And I thank you for that. And hopefully somebody who's listening realizes that right now they're in college, right now they're thinking about what's next, or they're a career professional now and thinking about another way out, another route to professional life, and they'll look at education. So as we kind of wrap this up, man, I want to kind of go a little bit, not necessarily controversial, but I want to, kind of go Afro-American studies with us, man. And, I'm thinking that Brown v. Board, right? So Brown v. Board comes through and 54. And so we had this conversation around how as a nation do we navigate this sort of idea of separation or segregation. And pre-Brown v. Board, we knew that most of our Black children were taught by Black teachers, right? Well, we know that our Black educational systems were primarily, not exclusively, but primarily engaged with Black teachers. What we also know is that once desegregation took form, we as educated Black folk had a lot more opportunities to do a lot more things, and teaching seems to have fell by the wayside. Let me ask you, well, it's controversial, brother, but let me just ask you a question. I've heard the websites, you've probably heard people have these conversations that, Black America has faltered ever since we've desegregated, right? That kind of thing. So do you subscribe to the idea that desegregation sort of reduced the number of Black educators, and that effect might have might challenge our community some?
I don't think that desegregation in and of itself reduced the number of Black teachers. But also I think we also have to, the conversation around desegregation is oftentimes an either or and not a both and.
Okay.
Right? It's oftentimes, well, you have a certain segment who will say, well, desegregation hurt the Black community, full stop, right? And then you have other folks who will say, well, desegregation was necessary because we pay taxes and we need to be a part of this larger American. We need to be inclusive and be considered citizens in this larger American experiment. Full stop. I think it's a little more complicated. So I'm gonna do the whole academic thing, right? We academics, we always and rightfully so capitulate to the notion of complexity. Like there are multiple ways to look at it, but it's not a simplistic thing. So I'll say a couple things about desegregation and specifically with regard to education.
Okay, we got about 3 minutes, my brother.
All right, I'll say that when we look at the current state of most urban school districts and even most southern school and rural school districts, they are still segregated. You still have most Black students go to school with other Black students, and they have primarily Black teachers. They have a lot of Black teachers. They have a lot of white teachers. So if you just want to talk about numbers and the way that public schools look today, it's still primarily segregated. I mean, it just is. I think the other component is the issue of curriculum. Desegregation wasn't simply about integrating classrooms of Black and white students. It was also about challenging the hegemony of primarily white-centered curriculums and teaching methods that excluded the voices of people of color in the classrooms and did not account for the ways in which different students have different social, emotional, and academic needs. Right. So I think that has to be an important point that is highlighted. The last thing I'll say about it is, when it comes to desegregation, it's not simply about the issue of race. It's also about the issue of economics. And we have to have a real conversation about property taxes and the ways in which schools are funded.
Right.
And if we don't have that conversation about class and race, economics and culture, then we're really not having we're not doing a service to the ways in which we should really be engaging and challenging how students, particularly Black students, are learning, and how we can help increase the positive outcomes for our kids.
That's real, man. That's real. And so we've just had a wonderful conversation with Dr. Kamasi Hill. And Dr. Hill is a high school teacher at Evanston High School in Evanston, Illinois. Brother, man, it's always good to see you. I am proud to be your friend, your brother, your colleague. I thank you for your time. And I'm sure my audience have been enriched by your sage information. Thank you, bro.
I appreciate you having me. I appreciate it. Take care. Right. All right.
And to Dr. Kamasi Hill and all the Black teachers like him,
I'll drink to that.
I'll drink to that. So next, we have a good brother, a brother who I first met at Fresno State University. Fresno State University, or Cal State Fresno, should I say. He currently is a principal at the Achieve School in Austin, Texas. And a good friend of mine. I welcome to the Straight No Chaser audience, Principal Mackie Mason. How you doing, brother?
Dr. Bailey, how's it going? How's it going?
Man, it's a beautiful day here in Ohio. I can't imagine what it's like in Texas. It's probably like 100 degrees, ain't it?
120. It's fine. We good.
That's a daggone shame. The devil is a liar. But look, man, real quick, man, let's just kind of jump in, man. When I met you, man, you were like a broadcast journalism major, right?
Yeah.
Like, how did you get from broadcast journalism to be a principal of a school?
Yeah, it's crazy. You're right. I was a broadcast journalism major, graduated with that degree. But during that time, I had a recruiter from Teach for America reach out to me and said, "Hey, did you know that education is kind of a big issue in this country, especially with kids that look like you?" And I said, "Do I know it? I lived it. Right. I'm very familiar with education equity. Having my mom having to sign me up when I was like 2 to have a chance to get into a magnet school, right? Having to, ride a bus for, 2 hours round trip every day to get to a school that provided me with opportunities, right, to be able to succeed. And so the notion was floated, hey, I know you want to do your thing, right, but it seems like you have a service and a justice bend. How about go to a classroom, go to a place where they need you, go to a place, like, be a face for these kids to see that they can do it. And, after you do your service, then, do your thing. And so, I reluctantly, admittedly, the last minute of the last day of the application, filled out the application for Teach for America, and then was honored to be accepted. And then went and taught in the Rio Grande Valley. On the border of Texas and Mexico, and just immediately was like, oh, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. So it was really interesting coming in from an organization that had a justice bend. And so I came in education with this idea of, like, we need to fix the gap. We need to fix the educational gap. It's not a joke. It's not a game. And we need to do this. And so coming in from it, that's my lens when I look at education. And so it's really been informative as I've moved up, if you will, and then have started and launched a school here in Austin.
Yeah, man. I thank you, and I thank you for all that you've done. And it's so remarkable to see what you're doing and to watch you over these years. And that's why I asked you on the show too, because you didn't go into this saying, I want to be a teacher, right? How you realize that teaching is a calling, it is a vocation, and it is something that sort of has long-lasting effects. But I got to push you just a little bit, because I can hear some people in my ear telling me, Doc, man, Teach for America, though. So let's just jump in here, man, just a little bit, man. So the word on the street, man, the streets be talking. The word on the streets is Teach for America is this organization by liberal white folk who all thing they want to do is to sort of save the children, right? And so they're sort of mission driven, and they have this sort of salvific mentality. And every now and then you'll get a Mackie Mason, but for the most part, you throw these, probably well-meaning and good, white females into these urban spaces, and they're about as lost as in the sauce as they could probably get. So, Mackie, tell me how folk like that got it all wrong.
Yeah, so first of all, I think that the perception was rooted in a kernel of truth, right? I think for a while that criticism was valid. But what I respect about the organization, why I still rep it, right? And why I still, rep my TFA set, is that they've done the work, right? And so I've been part of those conversations where it's like, hey, this is a problem, right? And instead of saying, which, you from a place of privilege, you could say, no, we're not going to listen to that, right? We're just going to keep doing what we're doing. Not only that, but I feel encouraged because I'm doing something good, right? So I don't need to listen to the savior. They took on, like, no, this is not okay. And there was leadership changes and actual push and things that I've been a part of to make sure that people of color, identified people of color's voices were heard. And so there's been tangible changes. And in the last few years, Teach for America, or the last probably 5 or 6 years, Teach for America has emerged as actually the best recruiter of teachers of color and the best training program for teachers of color across the nation, specifically focused on that. And so taking that criticism and turning it around to actually say, hey, if we're going to work in these neighborhoods, we need to make sure we're bringing in folks who look like the folks in this neighborhood. We also need to make sure we're not perpetuating white supremacy with our practices and what we teach. We also need to make sure that these folks have a spot on the board. Our CEO is a woman of color. It's a great example, actually, of how you take that criticism and actually do something with it. And me personally, I can't rock with an organization that's not doing that. So I'm happy to be a part of those conversations. I'm happy that that's changed. But obviously, there's still work to do, right? Because I think, it still attracts people who come in and look to save. And that idea of save is like, let me get you to this white normal, right? So whether it's professionalism ideas, whether it's suspensions in schools, all these things that education in general needs to work on that, in my opinion, perpetuates white supremacy. This happens within the organization as well. So those conversations are ongoing. But again, I'm proud to be part of an organization that takes on that criticism and does something with it.
Man, thank you. And thank you for that kind of work. Just a couple more questions. So you've been both in traditional public schools, right? And now you're in the public charter school type of situation.
Yeah.
For the person listening to this interview, what have you found to be the challenges, especially as it relates to Black students within both these type of contexts?
Yeah, you get me in all kind of trouble. You bring up the charter school thing, that's going to get people upset too.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to align you with Betsy DeVos, though, so don't worry about it.
Let's not do that. I would be hard pressed to find anybody on this call or anybody or on this show or watching this at home who doesn't think that any kid that looks like me in the neighborhood that I live in shouldn't have, or any parent, right, who's choosing where to send their child, shouldn't have the same choice as the people on the west side of our town does. And I say west side, and in your city, in your town, it could be the east side. Y'all know what I'm talking about, right? Those folks, if they don't like the school district, they could buy a house in a place where they like the school district, right? And so our folks and our families should be able to choose. I think as specific to your question, as far as Black men, every year I start off asking, we do like icebreakers. And I've been doing this since 2009. And every year I ask kids, like, what superhero do they align to, right? I'm going somewhere with this. Just follow me for a second. For the first few years, it was Batman, Superman, the typical stuff. What's been so interesting in the last few years is we've seen the young women starting to say Wonder Woman. We've seen Black Panther. We've seen the kids see they see themselves on TV and movies, and so they're starting, that representation matters. I've seen it firsthand. So of course that matters in something where you're going to spend a ton of your time, which is at school, right? And like the Dr. Hill was talking about, as a Black principal, right? I'm well aware that my job is not just to ensure that kids only see me when it's punitive, right? So not only that, break it all down, right? Like, we don't even suspend kids, right? We have restorative practices where we're going to say we're actually not going to treat you like a criminal, because that's the problem that our young Black men face, is when they show up, they're seen as something to be afraid of, something to be controlled. I was at one of the top schools in the country that serves, it's a magnet school that serves kids of color, and their school body president was giving me a tour, and I was shocked. I came around the corner, and there was a metal detector. Ooh. And this school, like, turn this way, you've got all these posters, top school of the year, over and over again, like, all this thing. And then you turn here, and I said, what do you think about that? And she said, I'm glad you asked that. You're the first person to ask that. I think it's interesting that we can achieve all this, and they brag about all this, but we're still viewed as criminals. Right. And that is at the base of everything, right? Like, if I can't get the benefit of the doubt when I show up, to not be viewed as a criminal in the space where I have to be at every day, you wonder why kids don't want to be at school?
Right.
You're blaming them, right? But look at what you're doing. And this is what I'm talking about with upholding and perpetuating white supremacy. We have to look at these things where it's like, oh, well, we have to keep them safe. And it's like, but you would never, ever have that conversation on the west side of town for us, the north side. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so at a base level, we have to view our young Black and brown kids as kids and people, and not criminals and something to be controlled.
No, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, you feeling that? You want to agree to that?
Can we?
Right, we gonna agree to that. So, Brother Mackey, man, last question, man. I know recently I saw you've been very active with Black Lives Matter stuff and protests, and really engaged in making sure that Black lives and Black hearts and Black minds and Black education is at the forefront of people's concerns. You are also a principal, brother. Talk to us, man. What are the challenges trying to affirm Black life while at the same time having to sort of be the principal of everybody?
I like that question.
It's such a good question, and I'm glad you asked it.
Thank you. I'm a good question here, brother.
Since you were my professor, I'll give you my thesis.
All right.
If we're tearing down Confederate statues outside, we need to be tearing down Confederate mindsets inside the classroom.
Come on now. Yes. Say that again.
Say that one more time for the people in the back.
So if we're tearing down the Confederate statues outside, we need to be tearing down the Confederate mindsets inside, particularly in the classroom. I'm in Texas. Part of our teachers perpetuate this idea that are the reasons that we're tearing down the Confederate statues. So that don't make sense, right? And so we have to be willing to go there and take those risks if we actually want to see that change. right? I can't go to a Black Lives Matter. I see my teachers out of Black Lives Matter marches. You can't do that and then come in the classroom and say the Civil War was about economics, not acknowledging that the economics was human economics. Human. Right. It was written into the Declaration. This isn't a conversation, right? And so we can't be afraid to say that. I can't be afraid to wear my Black Lives Matter shirt because folks are going to be upset. Right? I can't be afraid to speak at a Black Lives Matter shirt because folks are going to be upset with more bad faith arguments.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And so we've taken this step, and it's dope. You know, I live in a fairly liberal city, and it's kind of miscombobulating to just go everywhere and see Black Lives Matter, where before, and I know I speak for a lot of folks, I was afraid that I'd be a target of police violence if I even wore the shirt. You understand what I'm saying? And so it shifted quickly, but now's the real test. Because honestly, and I appreciate the support, but Aunt Jemima coming off, that's relatively easy, right? Hosting a black box, I appreciate it. I really do. I'm not like downplaying it. I appreciate it, but that's relatively easy. Are you willing to go to the mat with this?
Yeah.
Are you willing to sacrifice your safety? Are you willing to, even before that, sacrifice your mindsets that you've held near and dear? Are you willing to challenge the people who refuse to change? Right? So these are the tough questions as we get into this next phase of this Black Lives Matter movement, especially as a principal. And here's the thing. When I go home, when I go into work, I'm a principal, right? Which is different than at home where I'm a husband and animal owner, right? I can change those different hats. I don't take this black skin off.
I know that's right.
I don't have a choice. And then I knew the risk, right? But I didn't have a choice. And so I will continue to stand up and speak. And yeah, nobody's gonna shut me up.
I know that's right, brother. Listen, man, look, you gave us some nuggets. You gave me just a big chest to be proud to know you, to be proud to have had you in the classroom, just to realize that you know that you don't have a choice, and that as we talked about yesterday on Monday, that our blackness is political, right? Just as we walk, as we talk every day. So we have been listening to Principal Mackie Mason of the Achieve School. I
just want to thank you. You know, at my time at Fresno State, I was looking back at some emails, and the support that you gave really gives me those wings today to be able to speak out. So I appreciate you.
Thank you, brother. Love you, man. Take care.
All right.
Bless you. Whew.
Yes.
Tear down the Confederate monuments on the outside, but you gotta tear them down on the inside. Okay. We gotta drink to that, right? Definitely. So look, we are at our third. This has just been a rich hour so far. We still got one more phenomenal guest to be on the show. Jeff Dace, right? He has a little bit over 20 years, right? As an educator, he's a teacher. He has been a teacher. He has been a principal. He has been a system administrator. And currently, he is the assistant superintendent of schools in District 61, Illinois, which is my daughter's district. And I keep my eye on this brother because he got my daughter in his district, right? So I always got my eye on this brother. Brother Jeff Dace, how you doing today, man?
Hey, how's it going, man? Thank you for having me.
All right, good to see you. Good to have you. I appreciate you, man. We're just gonna jump right into it, man. So when did younger Jeff Dace tell himself, "I am going to be an educator"?
I didn't. Man, I remember in high school, man. I had one of my role models, my chemistry teacher, Mr. Bender. And he basically, he wore a lot of nice suits. And I just said, I want to get a job where I could wear a suit. Like
wear a suit up.
Man, for real. So ended up, I was going to join the Army. I didn't weigh enough. Long story short, I was 7 pounds underweight. They told me to go back and eat potatoes and bananas to weigh in. But within that week, I received a full scholarship to go to Chicago State University for teaching. That's how I ended up in teaching, man. And started taking the classes and loved it and moved up throughout from there.
Right. So you've been quoted, man, to have to be concerned about the belief gap, right? That you call. Tell us a little bit about what the belief gap is, especially as it relates to Black children, and why is this important to you as an administrator of color?
Yeah, the belief gap. We always say, you know, we got to tackle the achievement gap, but until you get to the achievement gap, you got to have the people in front of those students to believe, especially the vulnerable group, which is mostly our kids, you know, Black and brown kids. Just like Brother Mason said, you got to change the mindset. So if you're going to be a dynamic teacher, especially in the urban community, you got to believe in the kids and believe in their potential that's in front of you. And without that, you know, you're just going in daily spinning your wheels. I tell people, hey, if it takes me, you know, I don't like lying, but sometimes if it takes lying to motivate a kid so they can reach their potential, I just need to get them a little bit closer to that. And then they take it on and become independent. But you got to do what you got to do by any means necessary for our kids to reach their full potential. And that starts with the mindset.
I thank you for that, man. So look, you know, this conversation today has been about Black men teachers and Black males in the classroom, especially as it pertains to urban classrooms, but not exclusively. I know, man, you, like I say, you've been all over the system, right? You've taught, you've principled, you've been an administrator, now you're a district superintendent. You know, what have you seen in your years, or what are you involved in now as it relates to sort of attempting to recruit Black men, especially, but just minority folk into education?
Oh yeah, I mean it's various organizations that, you know, I'm a part of. Black Men Alliance of Illinois. You know, you have one in St. Louis, one in Chicago. Champs Mentoring, men of color in education. Like I'm originally from Chicago, so Men of Color in Education. It was a group of united brothers because we know there's a need for more Black males in the schools. So we started mentoring males that was interested in going into education in the high schools. And if they ended up going to Truman College in Chicago, it was an initiative started by Dr. Sean Jackson, the president there. Their tuition was paid and everything to continue the education classes. So, you know, we got to start telling the benefits about education. So when I go around and talk about being a teacher, being an administrator, man, I've been all over this world, you know, off of education and educational programs. And a lot of students do not see that, and Black males do not see that. It's a lot of perks and benefits from being a teacher that a lot of people don't tell about. So it is a good profession, but we got to start putting it out there because a lot of people, they down being a teacher, and they start with the pay and all of the things that you have to deal with. But hey, we're changing lives. We're affecting the future. Everything comes through us. So we just got to start spinning it and telling the positives about the field, the educational field.
So I mean, let's do that, man, for a couple of minutes, man. You have people who are going to be listening to it. We're probably going to have 5,000-6,000 folk eventually watching this. You tell us, as a superintendent of schools, you tell us, why should a young Black man right now, 19, 20, 22 years old with a college degree, why should they consider being a teacher?
Because you're going to change. You have the potential to change the world, to change life, to change your community, to make better outcomes. Man, it's the sky's the limit to it. So you just think about, you take a tree, it has no leaves on it. So if you put your time in, you put the work in, and all those leaves come on the branch, that's what you can do with a life. And a lot of times when people do not nurture our kids, that's when they end up shriveled and they're not branching out. So just think about it. You can do that with one life, 2 lives, continue. Man, you make a dynamic change in the world. I have kids right now, you know, that I taught in elementary school that still reach out and connect with me. When I go back to Chicago, they're still an integral part. It's about that relationship, you know. So when you take that on, it's a lifetime commitment. I'm not their parent, but at the end of the day, they're tied to me for life.
That is right. That is right. So, brother, I need to ask you a couple other questions. One, as a superintendent, man, what's going on with COVID-19, and especially in your district? How are y'all faring? What are the thoughts? What are y'all nervous? Are y'all excited? What's going on in Decatur, Illinois, as it relates to going back to school here in a few weeks, as far as you and your colleagues are concerned?
Yeah, and I don't want to disrespect my superintendent. I'm the assistant superintendent. So that's Dr. Frigo. So
Paul Frigo, shout out to him. Shout out to him.
So yeah, we've been working with the collective bargaining groups. We've been having task force. Basically, we have to finalize our schedule. We think we've come to that. You know, we've had teachers. We want teacher voice, parents, even students. One of the most powerful task force meetings that I had was talking to the students. And, you know, like they want more interactions with the teachers. But at the end of the day, you got to think about all stakeholders. Yeah, we want the kids back in school. That's where they're going to benefit the most. But at the end of the day, you got to understand the other assets to this also, which are the teachers and the staff. And a lot of this is about health and safety. So if we can't ensure that everyone's health and safety is going to be at the forefront, then, you know, we're going to hold on coming back as full as possible. So right now, we think we're going to have some version of a hybrid model where there'll be some in-person and some remote learning. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that everyone's health and safety is going to be okay before we do anything.
Right. And so I know with my daughter's school, they had access to laptops and tablets. Are you pretty comfortable that you can handle that kind of hybrid model with the majority of your students there in your district?
Yeah, we put out a survey, and right now, only 3% of our families that responded say that having internet access is an issue. So right now, we're looking pretty good right there in that area as far as having access.
Good. So let me ask you the last question, man. I'm about to, you know, I know you don't have a town right now, so you ain't got to get unwound here. But you know, our nation's chief educator, you know, that's the votes, man. I don't want to get you in trouble with Brother Frigo, man. I like that, brother.
Right.
But I do want to know just how can I put this, brother? How do you operate in efficient and optimal manner when you have a chief educator who is not necessarily, in my view, not necessarily pro-children, and especially pro-children of color, but certainly is pro-business and pro everything but teaching, right? We know that they've had protests around the country, right? Read out for education anytime she come into a town, and that's been kind of crazy. So kind of give me understanding. I mean, I know you are. I mean, like Brother Mason said earlier, you know, school choice is important. We understand that, but tell me a little bit about what Betsy DeVos represents as it relates, especially to Illinois, and what she maybe has done positive, or at least what challenges that she puts to districts like yours.
I mean, overall, her platform, you know, privatizing school vouchers. I don't believe in that. I do believe in competitive schools. However, you know, parents should have the best options. I'm not necessarily sold on that privatizing schools and school vouchers is the answer, because that just opens up more gray area for, you know, mismanagement and miseducation of our kids, especially when parents are making non-educational decisions. Her lack of, you know, education background this is one telling thing. Even Republicans, she was the first cabinet nominee that needed the vice president vote to get in that position. So that resonates, that on both sides there's some reservations about her. But at the end of the day, this is something that has worked for me for when I was a teacher, assistant principal, chief of schools, all the way up. Right. It does not matter who's at the top. You got to do what's right for your population of students.
Right.
At the end of the day, there's some federal guidelines, there's some state guidelines that all of us don't necessarily like or go along with. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to do any physical or psychological damage to my kids. So we got to do what we got to do to make sure that the kids that I'm serving have the best opportunities to have positive outcomes.
Man, I thank you for that. So listen, man, I know there's going to be a time I'm going to reach out to you and ask you to come back on the show. The next time I'm in town, which will be in a couple of weeks, I'll stop and maybe we can, you know, You can give a little social distance and hello. But I thank you, man, for your time. I do know that the district there in Decatur, we are better than we were a few years ago without you and Brother Paul Frigo. And so, I thank the two of you for the work that you're doing. And I just, however I can be of help, I certainly will be. And I just want to thank you for your time today and for sharing with our audience here at Straight No Chaser. Have a good day, brother.
All right. Appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
So listen, we just had Assistant Superintendent Jeff Dace. I knew that. I was just trying to give him to be aspirational. You know what I'm saying? But no, we just had him on the line. We had a wonderful day today. We started off with Dr. Kamasi Hill, who is my brother from Howard, who is a teacher of African American Studies and History at Evanston High School in Evanston, Illinois. We then had Mackie Mason, who is at the Achieve Schools in Austin, Texas. He is a principal of that high school program. And then we just had Assistant Superintendent Jeff Dace. What I want you to know today, audience, is that our goal today was to give you a little bit about programs, policies, initiatives that would get you, your cousins, your uncles, your nephews, your grandchildren to consider education, right? As you see, teaching is what I do, right? It's my thing. And it could be your thing. It should be your thing. And education certainly is how we're going to emancipate who we are as a people and where we're going to go. And so again, as we wrap this up, we have one more segment before we leave you. But remember, this is Straight No Chaser with Dr. Bailey. This is Miss Tisa. Please share this day today. Share it on Facebook. Also, to like our page and to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. This is the time at the end of our hour that we have a segment called I'll Drink to That. Although we have drunk to a couple of things already, some good conversations. I'll Drink to That is our segment where we highlight people and organizations and books or anything that really struck us this week as being interesting, as being positive, and we wanted to give a shout out to it. Right now, I'll Drink to That is not a sponsored segment, but it can be. You yourself can sponsor it if you want. Contact me, and we can talk about sponsoring this segment. So for the I'll Drink to That segment, who do we have today, Ms. Tisa?
Today for the I'll Drink to That segment, we have the My Brother's Keeper Alliance, which is a nationwide initiative founded by former President Barack Obama in February of 2014. The objective of the My Brother's Keeper Alliance is to address the persistent opportunity gaps that our young men of color face within the academic world, or in the world as a whole. And their goal is to develop and execute action plans that are focused on the challenges that our young men of color face. So in order to see if you have a My Brother's Keeper Alliance in your neighborhood, your city, your state, feel free to go to obama.org. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see, I think it's maybe the fourth one where it says, My Brother's Keeper, join the alliance. But if you are local and here in Springfield, Ohio, you have to look no further because we have a My Brother's Keeper Alliance chapter here. The nucleus of that Springfield chapter is Chris Wallace, Henry Alexander, Carlos Marshall, Moses, forgive me if I mispronounce your last name, Mabisha, and Raphael Allen. Now, the nucleus of the My Brother's Keeper here in Springfield, Ohio, is supported by Senator Sherrod Brown, the Springfield City School District, the Springfield City Board of Commissioners, and influential Black males within our community, whether they be pastors, firefighters, police officers, professional Black influential males that have a hunger to see the young Black males in our community not only succeed, but to encourage them to have a profound impact on their residential community and more than likely in the future, the world. So if you would like to support the My Brother's Keeper chapter here in Springfield, Ohio, whether it be with your presence, your tangible or your intangible gifts, we ask that you not be hesitant in reaching out to Chris Wallace. His email address is wallacecl@scsvoh.org, or you can reach out to Henry Alexander And his email address is henryalexander1515@gmail.com. They have two missions here. Their mission is to develop the youth and surround them with positive role models, and to foster a brotherhood through intergenerational mentoring programs. So we ask that if there's not a My Brother's Keeper Alliance chapter within your city or your state, please do what you need to do in order to bring one there. And if you're in Springfield, Ohio, and would like for your young man to be a part of the MBK Alliance, please don't be hesitant in reaching out to the mentioned persons.
Man, and that organization is important. And shout out to all those locally. I'm proud to say that I taught Carlos and I taught Moses and I taught Raphael, right? So those my homies. Henry and I have recently met. He got a new song out and he got me on the new song.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard that.
Okay.
He got me as a little speaker in the background. So shout out to those brothers and brother Chris Rollins. So President Obama and his My Brother's Keeper initiative. So all of you who are watching, who are working on behalf of young people, especially young Black boys, on behalf of Straight No Chaser, we'll drink to that. Thank you for coming and watching us today. This is Wednesday, the 15th of July. On behalf of Ms. Tisa, we are very happy to have had you. Please share this. Yes. Please like this. Please tell a friend. We'll see you Monday. I know next week's shows we have, I get this all messed up. We got so much good. We got hip hop and women next week. We got trauma as it relates to social justice stuff. We got a good week next week. Remember, we still have Cornel West coming. We still have Michael Eric Dyson coming. We still have Eddie Glaude coming. We have some local politicians and local folks. I mean, we're just excited for people who are interested in Straight No Chaser. So thank you for coming out. Have a phenomenal week and the rest of the week. And we'll see you next Monday. Straight No Chaser. We out.